Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for the invocation. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Wait, roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need to do the roll call first, of course. Mrs. Riska, the roll call.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Here.
Mrs. Koski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanes?
Here.
Mrs. Zarko?
Present.
Now, Council, we need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda and move consent agenda item 9E to consideration B.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege right here. We have a busy agenda tonight, so I'm only going to take a minute. What I'd like to do is have all of the council members come behind me if you could. We have with us tonight, dropped off by the Sterling Heights Stevenson Boosters, these Stevenson Titan Playoff t-shirts, okay? And I'm even going to put this little video in here so we're all together here, all right?
Okay.
So, now, the seven of us don't agree on a whole lot. Well, maybe we do. But one thing we can definitely agree on is that we are all behind our Stevenson football Titans. And this is the Titans football challenge that we're doing right here to say everybody in the community, everybody in the city of Sterling Heights, let's get behind our Stevenson Titans. They're playing in the state football semifinals this Saturday at Troy Athens at 1 o'clock. They're taking on Davison. And if they win that game, they go to the Ford Field the next week and play for the state championship and hopefully bring it right back here to Sterling Heights where it belongs, right? Yeah. Everybody, go Titans. Go Titans. Go Titans. You're making us proud, and Sterling Heights is behind you, and we hope we can get everybody out Saturday in Troy to watch our Titans win. So, go Titans. All right. Thank you. Go Titans. So, that was fun and kind of unprecedented. Probably our first Facebook Live during a council meeting. All right. Council, the next item on our agenda tonight is the report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor, and how can I possibly top that?
Don't even try.
Well, let me try by reminding everyone that city offices will be closed for Thanksgiving next week, and that's on Thursday, the 28th, and Friday, the 29th. As a result, there will be a delay in refuse collection one day. So Thursday's collection will be on Friday, Friday's collection will be on Saturday. So please be reminded of that. And also the 43rd annual A Sterling Christmas will be held on Saturday, December 7th. We always have a great turnout for this. I'm sure it's on your calendar, but just as a reminder, again, it's December 7th. That will also be the opening of the ice rink, and that's from 5:45 till 8:30 p.m., December 7th. And it's been hard to talk about leaf collection the last week or so, but just a reminder that the city's leaf collection program, I should say yard waste, but mostly leaves now, will continue through the week of December 9th, and actually it's been extended a week through December 13th as well. So now that the snow is melted, we really do have an obligation to get all the leaves up, so we encourage residents to do that to the best of their ability the next few weeks. And we do have an ordinance that pertains to leaf removal, so we don't want to have to enforce that. So we certainly request your voluntary compliance. Now, speaking of something that's more timely, that's snow emergencies. As you know, we had to call one of our, I believe, the earliest snow emergency ever in the city's history last week. I'm not aware of any point in time, one being called earlier. But I just wanted to remind everyone that we send out those alerts to the best of our ability on all different platforms. We post an emergency on our website, we send it out on our listservs, we alert the media. But what I really wanted to remind people to do, and strongly encourage you to do this, is to subscribe to our alert system, which means you can get a text or an email instantly once a snow emergency is declared, and it's really easy to do. You simply go to our main website page and click on the I Want To option in the top right-hand corner, and then you will have an option to choose the Request option, and then you simply click on Notifications. Scroll down and click on Snow Emergencies, and that's it. You type in your cell phone if you want to get a text alert, and or your email if you want to get an email alert. So it's very effective. We have a lot of people who have signed up for this, but we'd really like to have more. It will save you a lot of grief. Just as a reminder, when there is a snow emergency, vehicles have to be removed from the street for obvious reasons. We have to be able to get safety equipment down the streets. We have to get the streets draining properly, and so on and so forth. When we enforce this, the last snow emergency last week, we had to issue about 300 tickets. As a reminder, they're $25 a piece, and we'll continue to enforce this throughout the winter months. Thankfully, the vast majority of the city, once again, complies with this ordinance requirement. And also a reminder, too, sidewalks have to be cleared within 24 hours of a snow event, so please do what you can to remove snow from your sidewalks. And one of the greatest programs that we have been trying to push out and make sure everyone is aware of is an on-demand snow removal service. Much like Uber and Lyft, you've heard me talk about this, you can request that snow from your sidewalk and or driveway be removed from your smartphones, just as though you're ordering an Uber. Instead, they come out and clear your driveway and sidewalk. It's called Lawn Guru. You can go to our website to download the app, or you can simply go to the online smartphone store and download it to your smartphone. There's no charge to download it, that is. Of course, there's a charge for the service itself, but it's very convenient, and it is on demand, which means you do not have to sign a long-term contract for the winter months and pay a retainer fee and then may not have to use that service. This is just on demand as you need it. And Mayor, lastly, on my report this evening, you may have noticed there's an agenda item under the consent agenda this evening that pertains to the Iron Bell Trail, which is being developed throughout the state of Michigan. It runs right through the city of Sterling Heights, and there's a resolution on the consent agenda this evening that requests the city's support as this trail is being built out. The resolution tonight does not require any sort of monetary contribution whatsoever. It's just a resolution of support. And representing the county, Macomb County this evening, is Norm Cox, and he would like to take a few minutes and talk about this very exciting project.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this project this evening. Oh, there we go. For those of you who are not familiar with the Iron Bell Trail, and probably most of you have heard of it by now, it is really all about showcasing Michigan communities. It's going from one end of Michigan. It has both a bicycling route and a walking route. And it's all about providing recreation, transportation, and economic opportunities. And it's really built through partnerships, and that was key. We had a great steering committee for this project that was involving folks from the DNR, county, local. We had ITC involved. It was a great group, as well as the public input that helped guided this. The bike route, the one that we're more concerned about here going through the city, this is primarily using existing shared use pathways in the south part of the state, much like you have along Dodge Park. and it is about over 70% complete. Now, the gap we have in Macomb County is probably one of the most challenging ones in the entire state. It's a very dense, highly built-up areas. So we took a while, we looked at a lot of different routes, trying to figure out what is the best way to thread our way through these different communities. The project scope, the bigger picture here, is beyond the city of Sterling Heights. We're also working with Warren and Centerline. And we are trying to reach a consensus on the route that is both feasible, it's affordable, and fundable. We're looking at what the different agencies that provide funds for this, what they're looking for. We also wanted to come up with a clear strategy to get it on the ground, and we're looking at what is the roadmap for completion. Who is going to do what, when, and who's going to be paying for what, trying to lay this out so we actually kind of move towards implementation. Now, we have the route north and south of the county is quite well defined. And as we looked at what we're trying to do here and through Macomb County, and we said, okay, we want to keep a direct route. We want to link up your key community amenities. It also use it as a tool for economic development and promotion of your community. It is to be a very family-friendly route, something you want to go on with your kids and everyone feels comfortable using. It has to be technically feasible. We want to be fiscally responsible with the routes that we do, trying to take advantage of the facilities you already have on the ground, and make sure that we're meeting the funding guidelines for the sources we're eventually going to be asking money from. So we're going to look at 3 segments through the city here. Segment 5 we call the North ITC Corridor. It's about a little over 1 mile from 14 Mile to 15 Mile Road. This is a off-road share use pathway, kind of a very wide asphalt path that everyone could use. This is both one of the most exciting and simultaneously challenging segments in all of the county. We get to have a trail along the Red Run, which is really exciting. It's been talked about for years, and this is one of the few areas where through cooperation of ITC and public park property, we could actually pull this off. But because it is the ITC corridor, I want to give kudos to our engineer, Bergman Associates. They did a lot of legwork working with ITC, looking at different routes to make sure that this is something that is not just a line on the map, but actually has a lot of thought and buy-in on it. And I think it's worth noting, one of the big features here, and of course one of the big ticket items, is going to be a bridge over the Red Run. But whether you went on either road, either side of this, you would have to build a bridge there just because we don't have physical room up on the bridge, existing bridge decks to put a bicycle trail. So we're going to have to build a bridge anywhere over the Red Run. We also connect to Baumgartner Park. So that's kind of tying in some of your key resources. This is about a $1.2 million project, and we hope to get it online around 2023 for a construction. Now, the next segment, going north of there, we're looking at about a little over 1.5 miles from 15 Mile up to Metro Parkway. What we are proposing is side paths along the south side of 15 Mile Road going up to the west side of Dodge Park. The Dodge Park pathways can be very similar to what you have already constructed on Dodge Park further north of here. The question might be, why not just go up the ITC corridor a little bit further? And we looked at that along with many other alternatives. One of the big issues is we'll come up to Metro Parkway and we would end up requiring getting over Metro Parkway or a mid-block crossing, which is a very challenging and expensive proposition. We're looking at this at a 2024 and a $1.2 million project. The last segment you basically have completed, and I want to compliment you for all the work that you've been doing here over the past few years. It's the 1.8 miles from Metro Parkway up to Utica Road. We'll be using your existing pathways. Of course, this is linking up the Civic Center, Dodge Park, and numerous schools. We're going to do a few enhancements we're proposing, some more rest areas, maybe a little bit more landscaping, making it feel more park and greenway-like, adding to what you've already done. And also, of course, the whole area is going to have wayfinding signage and identification signs, so if people happen to stumble upon here, they'll realize, hey, I am I'm walking on a trail that I could walk up to the UP or bike up to the UP or down to Belle Isle. That we'd also like to do in 2024, and because being you've already done it, it's very low cost of a couple $100,000. We have put together a funding strategy for these where we looked at the cost for the trail, the intersections, wayfinding amenities, looked at obvious state, federal, local, and private foundation dollars and groups that might help fund this, and tried to spread this across. It's not a fixed thing, but this is a guideline that we could work, trying to use all kinds of different available sources and what they'll fund. And then I would just say this is not your traditional master plan. We always had an eye on this as something that's going right towards construction. So beyond the overview maps that I see you have in your packet, we have 86 pages of cost estimates that go along with this. We have a 15-tab monster spreadsheet looking at how we could implement this thing. All the summaries of the public engagement, the online map input we got, and the summaries of the input we got from folks in different workshops, and also the presentations we did. So there's a wealth of information that is available on the website. The address is up there. So with that, I guess if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Council, anyone have any questions? No? Well, I think it was a very comprehensive presentation. We appreciate it. I mean, I know there are members of this council and this community that are very excited about this project and want to do anything we can to help. So very excited about it. Wish it was 2020 and 2021 instead of 23 and 24. But I understand there's a number of challenges too. So we appreciate your presentation tonight and thank you very much for it.
Thank you, and appreciate all the help your staff has given on this project.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. And just a couple quick updates on road projects. The good news is all of our city projects are now done, our neighborhood road projects and some of the major road projects that we've been involved in that are city projects are now complete. Now the bad news is there's still a couple of major road projects for which we're not in control that are not complete. The most notable one is Shaner. We've received a number of complaints and a number of social media interests on this section of roadway. As you know, there are still barricades up, and it doesn't seem logical knowing that work isn't going on. However, the contractor started up again today. There was a week delay because of the snow. The contractor's backfilling the landscaping and curb behind the curb, and they're starting on the north end and working their way south. So as soon as that is done this week, they will then stripe the road. That's scheduled for Friday, and it should be opened up Friday. I emphasize should because it's dependent on weather conditions. If it's raining on Friday, they won't be able to stripe and it won't be opened up entirely. So we'll see how that goes. That is a Macomb County road project that I wish we had some control over, but we simply don't. And in the county's defense, they've been thrown a curveball with the weather conditions, to say the least. Another project that we've had a lot of interest in, wondering when it's going to be finished up, is Moravian and Shaner. I'm preempting Councilwoman Schmidt, who I think was going to ask something about this at the end of the meeting. So the update here is that, and now we're working directly with the owner of this project. That is a commercial development on the corner of Moravian and Shaner. They have gone through a number of delays beyond their control, certainly beyond the city's control. As part of that project, the developer has to upgrade the road. It's the developer's responsibility to upgrade the road, not the county's and certainly not the city's responsibility. The developer is doing that as we speak. They were out there today finishing up the north side of Moravian. So once they get that north side curb work poured, hopefully yet this week, they'll be paving next week, and that road improvement will be finished up next week. I suspect it might take another week longer than next week. However, that road work is going on. So those are really the only two projects. 14 Mile Road is progressing. That's a county road project as well, but they're hoping to have that finished up in a couple weeks as well. Thank you very much, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. One other housekeeping item. Our city attorney, Mark Koszubski, had a family emergency tonight, and he was called away just before the start of this meeting. So our assistant city attorney, Don Denault, will be sitting in, and thank him for getting here as quickly as he could to fill in. So with that, we have two presentations on our agenda tonight. The first presentation is to receive an update on service enhancements and initiatives of the Department of Macomb County Clerk. We have our Macomb County Clerk and Register of Deeds, Fred Miller, here, and we appreciate him being here to present to us. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's great to be here. Thank you very much. It's my first time addressing this body, and it's on behalf of the 90 men and women at the Macomb County Clerk and Register of Deeds Office. I want to bring you greetings. I'm making an effort to get to all of the 24 or so communities throughout the county, and so I've been to tiny little village of Armada and now here at mighty Sterling Heights. But I do want to say two things briefly, and I'll keep my comments brief because I know you have a busy agenda, but one of the great pleasures of being in this office for the short time that I have been has been getting to know the different communities, and I can say without reservation that really it's been a pleasure to get to know Sterling Heights better. Of course, I've lived in Macomb County for many, many years and eaten in Sterling Heights and recreated in Sterling Heights and all kinds, but to be part of the community life in so many different ways, whether it be the 9/11 ceremony or the Veterans Day ceremony last week, you know, the Memorial Day Parade, Sterling Fest. I mean, so many great things, and you got to know that from an outsider's perspective that your team does such a great job representing the community. And it's been some sad times when Mayor and Councilman Yanes and I were at the Chaldean Foundation grieving with the community when that gentleman was deported and then died, or celebratory events like Sterling Fest. It's really been a real pleasure to get to know Sterling Heights better, and I appreciate that. I just want you to know how impressed I have been with the community and seeing the city center sprout up as it is. We spend a lot of time at Dodge Park. I'm accompanied, my sidekick here is Audrey, and we spent a lot of time at Michigan Revolution, a great Sterling Heights business, at Merrill Road and 18 Mile. The 2011 girls soccer team had a hard season, the outdoor season, but their indoor season, they're undefeated so far, so go Revolution. But real briefly, I wanted to just kind of say, thank you for your patience and perseverance with the county clerk's office, and I'm proud to share the good news. To give credit where credit is due, again, there are some incredibly dedicated men and women that work there that predate my service there, but they've been subjected to indignities and harassment and problems that nobody should have to endure in a professional setting, but throughout it all, we're able to maintain professional service on behalf of the county and behalf of the local communities, and really, it's a pleasure to serve with them and work with them the way that we do. As an overview, we have 4 different divisions. Our elections division, which you all know well. One of the great things about this is that we get to work with our local clerks, and I can say without reservation that your city clerk, Melanie Riska, is literally without peer in this county. She is the best local clerk in the county and one of our leaders of our County Clerks Association, and I know our team and her team work very closely together, and you should, again, telling you stuff that you already know, but you should be very proud of the excellence that is represented by your clerk's office. We have, you probably know this already, but interesting election a couple weeks ago. You had looks like 20.4% turnout. 17,906 voters came out. And perhaps Clerk Riska can tell you better, but the interesting thing for Sterling Heights and for other communities, we're now seeing more people voting by mail, voting absentee than at the polls. And Sterling Heights did that, 51% of you, which mirrors the county average of people voting by mail, voting absentee with the changes in Prop 3. One of our most successful programs that we've reinstituted has been our mobile office. We were at the Sterling Heights Senior Center in the spring and ended up in the early summer. Was one of our most popular, most well-trafficked mobile offices, and that's a service that citizens can come there to conduct any of the business that they would normally have to go to downtown Mount Clemens to do, so they can do it here in Sterling Heights. I'm pleased to to say that we've worked out a deal with Kristen and Jennifer at the Senior Center. We're going to be back on March 4th, and we're also working with them to have our first evening hours mobile office that we'll be able to have here in Sterling Heights sometime in 2020. So again, appreciate your partnership and the great operation that they run at the Senior Center. So that's elections, which you know well. Vital records, we handle birth certificates, marriage licenses, death certificates. Actually, the city, you're one of 3 cities that handles birth and death records on your own. But for the rest of the county, we do that, as well as business registrations, DBAs, notary publics, veterans cards, and the CPLs, as I said, and the like. We serve as the clerk of the court for the 16th Circuit Court, one of the busiest courts in the country, in the state, excuse me. And we run the jury pool, 15,000 people from throughout the county. Ran the numbers, we had 581 people from Sterling Heights that were called for jury duty last month in October. Not all the people who answered the summons, but those are the people that were called. And you have to get to know the guy called James Biernat Jr., the chief judge. If you want to get out of jury duty, that's not something that I can do for you. Although there are you can get you can get excused for being over 70 or for certain medical reasons. And if you're a student, I have found out if you can present a class schedule, you can get a deferment to when you have class, when your class is done. So we do that. And then lastly, Register of Deeds. And we hold 8 million different images going back to throughout the history of Macomb County. Anytime you buy or sell a property, home or business, to register your ownership, you register those deeds with the clerk's office. The mayor and I have corresponded about this significantly over the course of the year, as that impacts his law work. But we had 2 duplicate services that access the same data. One was called the Super Index, which was powered by Google. One is called U.S. Land Records. And we were faced, when I first came into office, with the choice as a back-end technology migration at Google. They were going from Google Search to Google Cloud. And to continue that service, which was a very popular service, would have been a $400,000 premium, which we deemed to be not palatable. So we retired the Super Index. We've made enhancements to this land record service. And this is where people can go on and have a fraud alert to find out if there's any changes with their deeds, or to research, ownership, and title companies and attorneys use that an awful lot. We've gone out for an RFP. We've selected a vendor, Tyler Technologies, their Eagle Recorder product, which is used by some counties in Michigan, including Genesee County and Washtenaw County. And it's a really user-friendly platform that's going to have a lot of the user-friendly capabilities of the Super Index, but really have that comprehensive search that we offer with U.S. Land Records. But within all those records, it tells a different story. And so I want to share with you and kind of present this. This is from our archives from the Register of Deeds. This is a map of Sterling Township from 1875 that kind of goes back through and shows all the different farms at that point, or the landholders. So the property that we're on right now was at one time owned by, in 1875, Jerome B. Harvey and William Upton were the 2 farms that owned this. Yep. But so I'm going to present this to you. I'll give it to you, Madam Clerk. For you all. But if 1875 isn't far enough back for you, we can look back to this handwritten deed for this property that was deeded for the sum of $221. And I have a copy of that for your archives as well. And then if you go way back in time, back all the way to 1825, predating Michigan statehood, the U.S. government deeded this land that we're standing on right now to one Tabor Wilcox, who literally came and homesteaded this and was deeded it to from the U.S. government, signed by John Quincy Adams, and given it to Tabor Wilcox, who was the first person of European descent to claim ownership of this land. And then they registered that deed, which is the copy that we have, in 1929 for that original deed. But I want to present that to you as well for your archives, so you have that. So we stand on storied history of this ground that we're standing on. So with that, if you don't remember anything else I say, remember this. Thank you for the honor of serving, and I'm at your service. If there's a way that my office can be of service to you in your roles, or if we can serve the people that our mutual constituents, I hope you don't hesitate to call on me, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We really appreciate that. And and those items that you've presented to us are really, we will cherish those. That's very interesting. I don't know if anybody else up here knew about the history of the land we're standing on that deeded and signed by John Quincy Adams. That is really, really remarkable. So thank you for presenting that to us. Council, is there anyone that has any questions for Mr. Miller?
Mayor.
Mrs. Koski?
Mr. Miller, do you think that you could get us a copy of the deed to Dodge Park? Because I believe it was then Senator Guastella that presented it to the mayor of Sterling Heights, or I believe it was the mayor that he presented it to.
I'll do a little bit of research. I did bring along, because there actually are three plats that we're staying on, and the farm, the second farm that I mentioned, this, it's called the William Upton Farm, included the eastern part of this parcel up into what is now Dodge Park. And so that was part of that. I'll look and see if we can find the deed from Tom Guastello. He's a good friend, and I know that he'll like seeing that as well. But I do have some other where the township was deeded from a landholder back before it became the city back in '64. But anyway, yes, of course, we'll look at that, and I'll make sure to get it to you.
I don't know who the deed was from. All I know is that he was the one that presented it to the city. So
And we lost it?
we lost. No.
Well, those of us who know Tom, former Senator Guastello, know that he has a way of finding things and making,
Well, he was the one that told me. He
okay.
said, look for the picture of him handing the deed to the city, and I just thought that would be very nice if we could add that to the collection that you presented to us tonight.
I have some homework.
You do. Thank you.
Council, anyone else? If not, again, we appreciate you being here and presenting this to us. To say that you took over an office in turmoil would be quite an understatement, and you've really steadied the ship, and I do appreciate the discussions that we've had about services. The clerk's office is a very, very important part of our county government, and it's one of the parts where, you know, if it's not working well, it really has an impact on a lot of people's lives, whether it's, you know, they can't get their deed to their house recorded, or they can't find out title to their house, or if they need that marriage license or CPL, or if the lien network, which has all of the law enforcement's database is not updated, then there could be criminals out on the streets, and we wouldn't know about it. So thank you for your work and what you've done, and we appreciate it. And if we could give Mr. Miller a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, we appreciate your partnership, too. Next presentation tonight is to receive a mural created at the Genesis Credit Union Kids Tent during the 2019 Sterling Fest Art and Music Fair. We have a presentation from our Parks and Recreation Director, Kyle Langlois. Mr. Langlois.
Good evening, Mayor Taylor, members of council, and all gathered here tonight. Kind of excited to be up here doing something that I don't think I've done yet in my tenure as a Parks and Recreation manager or director. But I'm here to kind of really trumpet a great partnership that just started in 2019 with one of our new community partners and vendors, and we call them partners because it's more than just a sponsorship. We find ways to mutually further our mission of our two organizations. And so I was very fortunate to come across Genesis Credit Union this year, and they sought out being a partner with the City of Sterling Heights and the Parks and Recreation Department, presumably seeing a lot of great things that are happening in our community and wanting to be a part of it. And one of the things that I appreciate most about Genesis Credit Union is not only do they bring financial support to us, but they also try to find ways to add value to whatever it is that they are supporting, events and programs. And in this instance, the Genesis Credit Union Kids Tent, they brought an artist that made a mural and had the kids take time to paint that. So a lot of the children that participated in Sterling Fest and our Kids Tent had a hand in this art that we're going to be seeing today. So I saw it for the first time today as well. I'm very excited, but I'd like to introduce a couple of ladies with the Genesis Credit Union that are here to make the official presentation. We have Heather Pizzala, who's the Vice President of Marketing for Genesis Credit Union, and Rebecca Liska, who's the branch manager of the newly opened Sterling Heights branch of Genesis Credit Union. So ladies, if you join me up here. Thank you for doing what you do. I am going to turn the microphone over to you to make your part of the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. The presentation is the exciting, this is called Art in Action. And so this was found actually at Sterling Fest in the kids' tent. And the original state that it was in was simply black and white lines, or white canvas with these black lines. We encourage kids and adults and everybody to step up and join in creating this masterpiece, to pick a color, pick anything that they would like, and pick a section and color it, add design, add shapes, and it really was whatever they chose to do. After that, we gave it back to the artist, David Casardo, and he takes it back to his studio and then just kind of cleans it up, thickens the black lines, and then this is the awesome masterpiece that we have created at one of your wonderful events, Sterling Fest, by kids and adults in your community. Genesis Credit Union is proud to present this back to you, and we hope you are able to enjoy it for a lot of years to come.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, if we could.
Council will come down.
Thank you.
Good? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Awesome. That's great. All right. Council, is there anyone that wants to make any remarks or have any questions?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Sarowski?
as I sit, want to thank Genesis for their opportunity for our residents to participate in this. My mom was an art teacher, so I grew up with a lot of art and a lot of coloring and a lot of painting and a lot of free work in our home to make things more beautiful. And there's nothing better than just having something done by our residents to bring out the best of our city and to make us appreciate it even more. So thank you again for supporting us in this, and residents and everyone who colored and did this beautiful mural. It's yours, so congratulations to you, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Council, anyone else? I want to again thank Genesis Credit Union. I think I did the orange balloon on the bottom right-hand corner. My kids participated in it, and what's great about art is how it does bring the community together, and this is, and usually we say it in a figurative way, but here art was literally bringing the community together, and we have this awesome mural that's going to be, I'm not sure where it's going to be.
In the community center.
In the community center? I think that was said.
That makes sense.
Appropriate.
Yeah, so it's going to be a reminder of the community we have and how we all came together on that weekend, and what a great weekend it was. So thank you very much, Genesis Credit Union. One more big round of applause if we could. All right. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City Code to add Article 8 entitled Illicit Discharge. We have a presentation from our Assistant City Attorney, Don Denault. Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Normally, I'd be standing over there by the podium to introduce this to you. It's with some sadness that I'm here sitting in this chair tonight, as the mayor pointed out. My colleague, Mark, has had a family emergency to attend to that I can relate to all too well, having been through something similar this summer. So please keep him in your thoughts, keep his family in your thoughts as we move forward with our business this evening. With that, I am here to present, and you may have thought you've seen the most boring, dry ordinances I could have ever presented for you, but I may have topped it. This evening, we are presenting to you for introduction an ordinance relating to illicit discharge of pollutants into the sewer system within the city of Sterling Heights. This ordinance came about as an initiative through the state, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, also known as EAGLE, for those of you who like acronyms. And they're requiring at the state level local ordinances like this one that they have had input into and have reviewed for all communities that have certain discharge permits, and they want, I think, the cities to take a more active and local role in enforcement efforts rather than defer all of that to the state of Michigan. And that way, by having an ordinance on the books, we can be allowed as a city to be more involved in enforcement efforts and best practices when it comes to stormwater management. The simple objectives of the ordinance are as follows: to regulate the contribution of pollutants to the municipal separate storm sewer system, which is also known as MS4, by stormwater discharges by any user; to prohibit illicit connections and discharges to the municipal separate storm sewer system; to establish legal authority to regulate and control all stormwater runoff for new land development or redevelopment within the city; and to establish legal authority to carry out all inspection, surveillance, and monitoring procedures necessary to ensure compliance with the new ordinance. Enforcement actions will include a right to enter and inspect non-stormwater discharges, to suspend storm sewer system discharge access when necessary to stop imminent danger to the environment. We have the ability to pursue court orders to terminate storm sewer system access, abate violations, or require the installation of monitoring equipment. We can issue notices of violation. We can abate any violations either at our own level or through some other agency. And we have the authority to issue municipal civil infraction and or misdemeanor citations. Much of the language of the ordinance is very technical. So here tonight, should you have any technical questions about the Greek that's listed in this ordinance, we have Mike Moore, our DPW director, and we also have a representative from HRC, Hubble, Roth, and Clark, both of whom were very instrumental in helping us develop this ordinance as well, and making sure that it got the reviews and approvals of the state. As you know, I always like to include a little bit of something that's a little more interesting than the dry information that's directly in there. For those who might want to find a way to understand this better, and I don't know who that would be because I found some interesting things online that I don't know that anyone knows exist. If you go to the michigan.gov and then the EAGLE page, they have a bunch of very interesting ways of teaching you more about being stormwater savvy, and that's really what this ordinance is about as far as pollutants and polluting the environment. You can find on that website a home scavenger hunt, a crossword puzzle about wetlands, a word search about household hazardous wastes, and a number of really interesting other ways to introduce children, and certainly even adults can learn a lot from all of the materials they have at that website, a lot of those materials are very entertainingly titled, including some publications and brochures you can look up, such as Don't Get Hosed, Is Your Yard to Die For, Cover Your Bald Spot, Get the Dirt on Your Soil, all kinds of really interesting things. Probably the most interesting one, I have yet to see this on anybody's car, but there's a decal that you can print called Storm Drains Aren't Garbage Cans. So if you're into this sort of thing, if this interests you as a topic, you can learn a lot more through those educational materials at the EAGLE website. But for purposes of tonight, should you have any technical questions or legal questions about the ordinance, I'm certainly here to help, as are, again, Mike Moore and HRC.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Denault, and a good lesson on what lawyers do. You never know.
You never know.
So with that, I'll open it up to the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to make any comments on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to introduce the exciting ordinance amending Chapter 53 of the City Code to add Article 8 entitled Illicit Discharge in order to comply with the requirements of the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
It's Greek, so I support and I'm happy to have Mr. Denault's interpretation of how this shall improve things, so I have nothing to say.
Council, anyone else? Mr. Yanis. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Zarko. Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Through the chair to Mr. Denault. I know this ordinance is with the state guidelines through EAGLE, but have we had complaints about offenders in the city that would warrant us doing this as well?
Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the question, I don't know of any, and I would defer that to Mr. Moore or anybody else in city administration that might know that answer. I have not, and I don't believe the city attorney's office has ever had to be part of any complaint process. My guess is if we do have any, those would have gone through the state prior to this ordinance coming into existence.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yanez.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair to Mr. Denault. Since we don't have anybody here from the fire department, I noticed that one of the prohibitions of this ordinance is discharges and flows through firefighter activities. And knowing that a source of PFAS is from firefighting foam, first of all, is the city buying PFAS-free firefighting foam? And if not, is there any requirements that the fire department has to document the use of firefighting foam, especially if it goes down the storm sewer drain?
Mr. Denault, if you know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, that's probably a question I would defer to Mike Moore or HRC. I can tell you that it's part of this ordinance is going to be that the Public Works Director or a designee will adopt some best management practices for those that should cover, I would think, those kinds of things, and certainly work internally with our fire department to address that issue. But that is not a specific topic that I looked at when putting this ordinance together.
Okay, and a follow-up? And this is actually something Mr. Moore probably will want to answer. Thank you, sir. In reading the ordinance, I'm trying to determine if this is going to be a proactive or reactive operation. Is the person who, whether it's yourself or your designee, are they going to have any specific sort of training, specific sort of regular review of businesses, or how exactly is this going to work through your department?
Mr. Moore.
So, yes, we already have received some training. HRC included us in some recent training for stormwater prevention, pollution. We also had good housekeeping training. So we have a couple inspectors that are being trained currently. And as part of this process, we will be doing inspections during rainfalls. There's TIMDL inspections that we have to do at outfalls, which are anywhere that essentially the road water drains into a creek, river. We will have to now conduct testing at said locations throughout the year.
And one more follow-up. And that also includes construction sites on new construction as they're moving earth and creating different levels of earth. I'm missing the term here. Are your people on site to make sure that the water drains not only properly, but there's no pollutants going in? Is that part of this as well?
Mr. Moore.
That's going to be more on the side of engineering. So engineering will be looped into that, but as part of new construction, engineering will make sure that catch basins are covered with the correct material and monitoring things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yanez. Mr. Vanderpool, anything you can add on the PFAS foam that is used by the fire department?
Well, I will have to report back specifically on the use of the fire department's foam and how often they use it. I don't have that data at my fingertips, but what I would like to assure City Council of and the audience members here and at home is that, first of all, our city, we purchase from the Great Lakes Water Authority, and they regularly test PFAS levels and provide us results of those tests. And in fact, the general public can see those tests as well. There's a link if you go onto their site. And the good news is our water supply is well below any PFAS levels that would be considered concerning or cause any sort of red flag. So that's the good news. But I will report back to City Council on PFAS impact of the very limited use of our fire department when they do have to utilize foam to put out plastic-type fires.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Anyone else? Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Mr. Denault, I see that we are creating a system so that we could fine businesses if they violate these rules, but do we have a separate set of ordinances where what the cost of the fine would be? No, it's cleanup, but is there a certain, I didn't see a levy of what the cost would be if we were fining people for violating these rules.
Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Radke, the standard misdemeanor limits apply here, so unfortunately at the city level, we don't have any authority to assess a fine that exceeds $500 at the misdemeanor level. Should there be a civil infraction type of violation, it would follow our standard fine schedule, which is $150 first offense, $375 second, and it multiplies as you get to up to a fourth and subsequent offense. With that, though, there is no cap or limit on cost recovery. So should there be an emergency response that requires cost recovery, that would be assessed certainly at city costs and administrative oversight fees that are standard throughout the city for cleanups of that nature.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Radke, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski?
should a resident be aware of someone that is violating this, that is actually dumping, let's say, oil into the sewer, who would they report that to? Is that a city complaint issue, or is this something that would be reported to DPW, or can you answer that?
Mr. Denault?
Yes, in fact, we have seen that very rarely, but throughout my career, on occasion, we get a complaint, and the complaint can go through any number of departments. It can go through DPW, it can go through code enforcement. I've even seen them go through the police department, asking them to go out to a homeowner's home and observe either oil being drained into a sewer system, or leaking into one, or leaching into our streets. So any and all of those agencies at the city or any other, I'm sure would entertain that complaint and get it to the right people.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Mayor Taylor, thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Denault. Mr. Denault, you mentioned storm sewers. Does this have anything to do with illicit discharge into the sanitary sewers? Or is this covered, can we pursue anything?
Mr. Denault?
Thank you. No, this is strictly related to storm sewer discharge and storm sewer management. This does not, I had asked that question myself when I first started looking at this. It has nothing to do with the sanitary system. That's regulated completely separately in a distinct way, and for specifics, I would certainly defer to Mr. Moore on that.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Denault, for your presentation and for the information on this. And we appreciate the opportunity to educate the public and take this opportunity to bring attention to how important our water system is, and what we're doing as a city to try to keep it clean and keep pollutants out. So we appreciate that, and I will go on the website and check out some of those resources. So with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is to consider adoption of a tax exemption ordinance providing for payment of service charges in lieu of real property taxes for the Autumn Ridge residential community located at 36498 DeQuinder Road and 36300 DeQuinder Road. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Radke.
adopt the Sterling Heights tax exemption ordinance providing for payment of service charges in lieu of real property taxes for the Autumn Ridge residential community located at 36498 DeQuinder Road and 36300 DeQuinder Road. And B, approve the municipal services agreement between the City of Sterling Heights and RAHF 4 Cambridge Limited Dividend Housing Association LLC, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Mr. Radke?
I just want to say this was covered very well in the last meeting, and I appreciate city administration working with them to bring something like this to our community.
All right, council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda with, I believe, the omission of E. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the consent agenda? Mr. Shea.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Administration. I just want to speak on item H, to adopt a resolution approving and supporting the Iron Belt Trail routing and feasible study. I just want to say I'm in support of that. I think it's going to be a good asset for the state of Michigan, Macomb County, and Sterling Heights. It's going to bring more people to this community in the area, and goes all the way to Belle Isle and from the UP. So I just want to say it's a great project for for everyone. So hopefully everyone's going to support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shea, on great shirt tonight, by the way. You're welcome. Anyone else on the consent agenda? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
It's been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is to consider appointments to City of Sterling Heights boards and commissions. We have, I believe, three openings, or three boards. We'll start with the Housing Commission. This is an open seat with the city council having the power of appointment to a partial term ending 12/31/2020. Is there anyone who would like to make an appointment to the Housing Commission?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to appoint Corey Venitas to the Housing Commission to a term ending December 31st, 2020, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter subset 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion?
Sir.
With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Local Development Finance Authority. This is an open position to a partial term ending June 30th, 2020, with the mayor holding the power of appointment. I had a candidate that I was ready to appoint tonight, and I spoke with him this afternoon, and it turns out he owns a business and that business is a tenant of the Velocity Center, and Mr. Koszubski has opined that it would not be appropriate to appoint him because the LDFA has some say over leases and things of that nature. So unfortunately, I contacted my backup candidate and left a voicemail and was not able to hear back from him before the meeting tonight. And so I would ask for one more postponement, hopefully the last, to I believe it's the December 3rd. Yes, the December 3rd council meeting. I'd entertain a motion to postpone this item to December 3rd.
So moved.
Support. It's been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The last is the Youth Advisory Board. There are 7 open positions, and this is a city council appointment. Is there anyone who has a appointment to the Youth Advisory Board? Going once, going twice? Okay, we will postpone this item to the December 3rd city council meeting as well.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda tonight is consent agenda item E, and this is to award a bid for snow removal services at municipal sites through May 1st, 2020, based on unit prices bid, estimated expenditure of $387,425. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to award the bid for snow removal services at municipal sites to Caesar Management LLC, Post Office Box 661, St. Clair Shores, Michigan 48080, through May 1, 2020, based on unit prices bid, and authorize the city manager to extend the bid term to additional one-year periods under the same terms and conditions.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, Mrs. Koski?
I would like Mr. Vanderpool to explain why we chose this particular company.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Koski, the item before you is for snow removal services in our parking lots at all of our facilities, including our major parking lots, and also some of the sidewalk and trailway systems related to those parks. We did bid this out. We had competitive bids. We bid it on what's called the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network, better known as Mitten. There's literally hundreds of contractors, probably thousands by now. It's been around for a while, that belong to this network statewide. So the beauty of this network is we're able to reach out even beyond our borders in Sterling Heights for good competitive pricing. It's also good for our businesses because they also can belong to the service and bid on projects and services in other communities surrounding the area here if they're interested. So we did go through a very formal bid process. We only had 2 bidders. One of the bidders bid on the specifications, but it was not complete. In other words, they bid on certain items and not others, and we considered that incomplete. The items that they did bid on, they were much higher than what turns out to be the low bidder. So KSAR is a low bidder. We have had some experience with them. They have performed the services at our facilities last year. Of course, we had some startup issues that we worked through with them very effectively, and throughout the year, their performance improved significantly last winter. Last week, when they had to come out and perform services in our facility parking lots, they did an outstanding job. So just by way of history, our parking lots at our facilities used to be provided by in-house services by our Parks and Grounds division. Some of you may recall, we went through a very thorough analysis a couple of years ago, and we determined that it would be cost-effective to move the Parks and Rec Ground employees into our Streets Department and eliminate the Parks and Grounds division and provide those services through alternative means, such as the contract that's before you this evening. So the reason we looked at that reorganization and it proved to be most advantageous is because we really needed those Parks and Ground employees in our Streets division. I don't think anyone would disagree that streets are the highest priority, right? When there's a snowstorm, we need our streets cleared first, not our parking lots, our streets, and that became the highest priority. Likewise, during the off-season, we needed those employees working on roads, repairing roads, general maintenance. There's no question. That's been the highest priority. So this reorganization has worked very well. Now, let me get back to the competitive bidding part of this. The bid that we received from the company that's being recommended, the low bidder, you really have to drill down into the unit pricing to determine its competitiveness. Looking at the lump sum estimate of $380,000 is really just an estimate. That's based on approximately 36 snow and ice events. We may have less, we may have more. So the 387 number is really sort of a meaningless number. You have to look at the unit pricing. And when we drill down and look at, for example, the recycling centers, we can all kind of relate to the recycling centers. We've probably all been to one or another over the years. You know, you have to plow the driveway going in, and you have to plow the lot itself. And each of those centers under this contract would cost $170.50 for a snow event that's up to 6 inches. Now, I think most would agree that's a pretty good price when you think of those lots in comparison to a driveway that could cost as much as $40, $50, $60 to have the snow removed. Likewise, when you look at our 12 major parks, from Delia to Baumgartner to Dodge Park right across the road, and the Dodge Park parking lot is a very large lot. That particular lot would cost $237 under this contract, $237.50 on average to have that removed. So that's pretty competitive as well. And lastly,
I'm still with you, by the way.
Lastly, let me just focus on the City Hall parking lot. The low bid was $3,375. The high bid was almost $6,000, so I'll stop there. Needless to say, this is a very competitive, we believe, justifiable contract. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. We also have in the audience our DPW Director Mike Moore and our Purchasing Manager Jared Bodine, who would be happy to provide even more details. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. Very, very invigorating presentation. Okay, anyone else on council have any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Radke.
Thank you. I was the one who asked this to be removed from the consent agenda. I have a couple concerns with this contract. I guess my first concern is only one bidder, the incumbent contractor, is the one who filled out the complete bid docs. I think that kind of says that maybe the contractor has the inside track on what it might cost or what the bid process would be. At the very least, I think this project should be bid out again next year, because I feel like the price, $400,000, is quite excessive. I also would recommend to my colleagues, if they are going to approve this, to amend the motion and have the city council approve this contract again next year. So the city manager unilaterally approving up to $400,000 in expenses each for the next year. I think they should come back to city council so we can decide on what to do. Furthermore, I have a few questions of Mr. Vanderpool through the chair. How much would it cost the city for our employees to do this job?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Radke, I think I'd like to call on Mike Moore just to comment on this, but I'll give you some more dry numbers. For example, the Parks and Grounds budget, that was essentially eliminated. We transferred the employees over to streets, as I mentioned, but that total budget was about $1.5 million. In that budget, the contractual services and supplies and so on, in and of itself, far exceeded the contract that's before you tonight. But I think, just by, if we were to look at just one area, the recycling lots, suffice it to say, there's no possible way, and I'm sure the DPW director would concur with me, that we could do that for less than $127 per snow event with our equipment, our very good equipment, and also our highly trained employees. We just couldn't match that. Again, this is a matter of priorities. We need our employees on roads instead of in parking lots. And this service does very well with what we need done in parking lots.
Mr. Moore, do you have a question for Mr. Moore? Do you want Mr. Moore to expand on Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I would echo what the city manager, Mark Vanderpool, says. As far as to drill down to the numbers, I don't know this document. It's not a DPW contract. This is a facilities contract, so it's tough for me to say. I'd have to do some number crunching to determine the value of these numbers. However, I would definitely echo Mark's comments that our priority are the streets. DPWs really across the country, I think, primarily we kind of use the term sidewalk to sidewalk, curb to curb. And the transition of Parks and Grounds being removed from DPW did allow us to keep those bodies and then focus more on the streets, which, as the city manager said, is our priority.
Well, I guess the question I might have then is maybe you need more bodies. No, we're outsourcing here. So we move them to a different division, do other work. We've outsourced 4 positions to a contractor essentially, or 5 positions, or however many we would need. And we're saying we're saving money, but it's a big contract. I'm not sure if we are saving money, and I've not seen a financial analysis that says we're saving money. We said that Parks and Grounds was $1.5 million, but I think that other things besides shovel snow outside. They weren't a 4-month-a-year group of people. They worked every day. So I'm wondering what the actual savings is. It's easy to say, well, we're cutting a budget item of 1.5 and replacing it with 400,000, but at the same time, I don't think it's all that they did. That's my concern with this contract. I've not been shown any financial document which would make me believe that we are actually saving money besides paying an incumbent contractor, in my opinion, an absorbent sum. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Radke.
But I would offer a friendly amendment to Mrs. Koski to strip out authorize the city manager to extend the bid term 2 additional years, to authorize the city council to extend the bid term 2 additional years, the 2 additional one-year periods under the same terms and conditions.
It's fine with me.
Okay, so before I'm not sure we had a motion, but I'm going to jump in. Mr. Vanderpool, if you could just respond, what is the purpose, in your opinion, of the city manager having the ability to extend the bid rather than having it come back to council? Why was that negotiated or included in the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually a very common standard provision that we have in a lot of our agreements. Generally speaking, in the cases where we have that, it is it becomes perfunctory. Once we have the competitive bidding, and typically we'll approve agreements, sometimes we'll approve them up front for a set period of time. Could be 3 years, could be 5 years. And sometimes then with options to extend a year or two. That's not being proposed here. We're not proposing a fixed period of time. But we've clearly illustrated this evening that the pricing is very competitive with the marketplace. We don't expect that will change in the next year or so. But nevertheless, the purchasing manager will take a good look at this next year and determine whether or not he feels it is still competitive. And if so, then it's more of a perfunctory process that then allows us to extend it. It's worked very well in other cases. I mean, if City Council would like us to report back when we're going through that analysis, just so you have the information that we're extending it, I think, that would be very reasonable. But again, this is a scope of work that's very routine. We've illustrated good competitive pricing and could have very easily justified a 3 to 5 year contract with this, with some escalators on it each year, but we chose not to. And we think it's very reasonable to have this 3-year agreement with the option to renew. Now, it's also very likely that, or I should say it's possible that the purchasing manager in a year would determine that perhaps the environment has become even more competitive. Maybe there's an economic slowdown, and he might recommend that it go out for bid, in which case we would do that and bring it back to City Council at that point in time if it's a different, or even if it is this vendor. So that remains to be seen, but we appreciate the flexibility. We think it's the most cost-effective approach.
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Koski.
To satisfy Councilman Radke, could we maybe say with council confirmation?
Mr. Radke.
Mayor Taylor?
I'd ask the city attorney to rule on that. I don't know if that's even allowed.
Okay, I'm going to give Mrs. Koski the floor just briefly again. And do you want to withdraw your motion and make a new motion, or do you want to let me go on to the next council member?
I would like to ask the city attorney if we take the motion as it stands and just add on at the end with council confirmation. Is that proper?
Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's absolutely perfectly proper. We want to make sure the wording was accurate to satisfy the intent of the motion maker and the friendly amendment. My suggestion would be that it be modified to read and authorize the city manager to extend the bid term 2 additional 1-year periods under the same terms and conditions upon confirmation by the city council.
That's exactly what I had in mind.
Mm-hmm. So, Mrs. Koski, do you want to withdraw your motion and make a new motion?
Again, my question is, can we just amend this
Mr. Denault,
motion with that phrase?
If we add an amendment, then we have to vote on the amendment and the main motion, is my understanding. So it might be quicker to just withdraw the motion and then read it again, and then we'll have a new motion, right?
Correct. The more efficient way would be to withdraw the motion in the second and start fresh with a brand-new motion as read, or, like you said, alternatively, we'd have to vote on amending the primary motion first.
Okay,
Whatever, whatever is your pleasure.
well, you're the motion maker, and if I were you, I would withdraw the motion and make a new
I
motion.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, Mrs. Koski, do you have a new motion?
Support it to be withdrawn first.
Mrs. Zarko, do you withdraw your support?
I have a question before I withdraw my
Okay,
support.
Mrs. Zarko.
Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool or Mr. Is it Bodone? Okay, Bodone? Anyway, to Jared. What I would like to ask is the initial bid process, was there a time limit in there? Was it a 1 year or was it 2 years? And by changing this, are we also changing the bid? I mean, that's what I want to know. The bid process.
Mr. Vanderpool, I looked at the bid overview, and it looks to me like it says, the city reserves the right to exercise renewals for 2 additional 1-year winter season options, 2020 to 2021 and 2021-2022 winter seasons. The city reserves the right to split or abstract any and all bids and award multiple contracts. I don't see anywhere where it specifically says that the city manager has, is the exclusive party who can exercise that right. Mr. Vanderpool?
Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll call on Mr. Boydine to clarify.
Mr. Boydine?
Good evening. So essentially, this was the first time that we've gone out to bid for this service specifically, after facilities maintenance received this responsibility from Parks and Grounds. This was the first go at getting this out to the streets, getting vendors to bid on it. So we wanted to have the flexibility of, instead of like Mark talked about earlier, instead of having just a 3 or 5 year contract, we wanted to have the flexibility of, this was our first go, we wanted to award a contract for a year, see how this contract goes. If it missed the mark, if we're not getting the performance because the indicators or the specifications weren't just right, we wanted to be able to have that option to let the contract expire in May, go back to the drawing board, re-edit, go back out to bid early fall, and try again our hand at the services. If the contract stood well, contractor performed as needed, then it gave us the flexibility instead of redoing the same, motions again to not only have that bid stand firm for another 2 additional years if needed, but also preserve that bid pricing and the bid rates, the unit prices bid for that 2-year period, which just like we said, it could be a more competitive market next year. It could be a less competitive market next year where we really don't see that the numbers would be down, but possibly up or higher. So that would be, especially with, the nature of minimum wage and everything else being out there, that's something that we wanted to preserve and to preserve those numbers for multiple years.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mrs. Zarko?
Yes. Only because, first of all, I don't have a problem with the contract the way it sits, so let's start there. I'm perfectly happy with the way the motion is on the floor right now. I really am. I think that what happens sometimes in a case like this is, and what I see is, there's a line that city council shouldn't cross, and that's my feeling is we have an obligation to the residents, don't misunderstand me, but when we start crossing over into what the city manager should be doing that isn't our job, I have a problem with that. And we pay Mr. Vanderpool a lot of money to run this city on a day-to-day operation. And to me, as long as we know that if we're going to be satisfied with this contract and we have the option to extend it, and not only that, is that we could get a bargain here because this is per season and not by push. So, I mean, they could be working here every week. So those are the things that I see in it. It might be an advantage. So I have no problems with the way the motion is, just the way it sits. And I really feel that if we start approving everything that the city manager does, we're going beyond what our scope of business is. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. We're going to put you to the test here, Mr. Denault. Does the second have to withdraw the motion in order for a motion to be withdrawn?
Well, I'll be honest, Mr. Mayor, I have not seen this particular fact pattern under Robert's rules occur in the past. It's my feeling, based on Robert's rules and my knowledge of it, that because the seconder of the motion is not in favor of its withdrawal, that we should probably revert to a motion to amend the motion that she seconded. So in other words, we had an original motion, she seconded that motion. The council should probably vote now on a motion to amend that motion rather than allow its withdrawal and a fresh start.
Okay, Mrs. Zarko, just to be clear, do you not withdraw your second?
Well, this is the problem. If I withdraw my second and we go and amend the motion, I'm not in favor of the new motion, but I am in favor of the contract for the snow removal. So you tell me where I'm at.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to amend, Mr. Radke. So just so that we're clear, Mrs. Koski asked to withdraw her motion. Mrs. Zarko did not withdraw her second. So the motion on the floor remains. And
She's a second, though, for.
And now
But she's now the first one. So she would need a second to hold her motion.
So we have a motion and we have a second, right, Mr. Denault? The motion was made by Mrs. Koski. It was seconded
Mrs.
by
Koski withdrew, so now Mrs. Zarko is the first.
I don't believe that's the case. What my understanding, based on your analysis, was that we have a motion on the floor. It was not withdrawn, despite Mrs. Koski's attempt to withdraw. Is that your understanding?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my feeling on this for Mr. Radke and the rest of the council would be that because the seconder expects that the motion move forward, the attempt to withdraw would need to be something that would be voted on by council to allow its withdrawal, which is getting more complicated. So I think it best that we treat it as a motion that remains despite the request to withdraw it, because the seconder has not acceded to that.
Okay.
And then we go forward from there.
So I offer my friendly amendment to Mrs. Koski to amend her motion.
Okay. Can you,
The friendly amendment.
The friendly amendment was to
explain what the amendment is?
resolve to award the bid for snow removal services at municipal sites to Cesar Management LLC, P.O. Box 661, St. Clair Shores, Michigan 48080 through May 1st, 2020, based on unit prices bid, and authorize the city manager to extend the bid 2 additional one-year periods under the same terms and conditions upon city council confirmation.
Okay, and I'll support the amendment as presented by Mr. Radke. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on the amended motion?
Mayor Taylor, do we get a chance to speak on the original motion
Yeah, so we're going to
for
speak.
the amendment?
So we're going to speak on the amended motion, and then we'll vote on that, and then we'll vote on the original motion.
Would you do it?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr., do you have a point of order, Mr. Yanos?
I have a question about this particular, Mr. Radke's motion.
Okay, well, Mrs. Schmidt has the floor.
Okay, sorry, Ms.
Well, no, that was just a question. So what are we discussing right now, the amendment or the original motion? Because we haven't voted on,
Yeah, because I didn't
we
withdraw the
haven't-
motion. I mean,
The
hello?
amendment's on the floor.
We're debating the amendment to the motion, which is to allow city council some oversight to have it presented to the city council.
okay.
Okay.
Then, do I have the floor still?
Yes, if you'd like the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so I am not in favor of the amendment. First of all, the situation that only 2 companies bid originally on this contract is no fault of ours. Just as it's no fault of ours who or who does not apply for jobs in our city. We are at the will of whoever puts those bids in. So the fact that the second bidder did not even complete the specifications of the bid clearly eliminates them through default. So why are we penalizing the company that actually gave us fantastic pricing as compared to the company that dropped out by wanting to go out for more bids or, and as far as the amendment goes, you know, we have professionals in place that are timekeepers, so to speak. And I have a lot of trust in our purchasing department, our DPW department, the city manager, I feel no need for us to micromanage, so to speak, by having to approve extensions when there's no need for it. The same terms for 2 additional years, nothing really goes down in price, let's face it. So let's lock in these prices for the next 3 years. And I have no issue with the original motion. So I am not in favor in the amendment. And that's where I stand.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Mr. Yanis.
So just a question. When we talk about bringing this back to city council, is it acceptable to bring it back to city council through a consent agenda item?
I would imagine it would be, but Mr. Denault, do you want to take that, or Mr. Vanderpool?
Mr. Mayor, I'm comfortable with
Okay,
that.
Mr. Denault.
I'm comfortable with it being a consent agenda item because it can always be removed should the council wish to debate it further.
Okay, thank you.
So, just let me say that, one of my biggest problems with government is it's slow and clunky, and I think that's probably a good thing most of the time. I appreciate the fact that governments really need to be quick on their feet to take advantage of situations. And we talked about this a couple meetings ago with another issue that escapes my mind right now. But the fact of the matter is, we do have to give our managers some leeway to be quick on their feet to help run the city not only efficiently, but make sure that we get the biggest bang for the buck. Having said that, $387,000 is a lot of dough. And there are checks and balances. And I trust everybody that's in this room, on this panel, that works for this city, that's watching right now. But take a look around us. They had some problems in Troy. They've had some problems in some other cities. We are the checks and balances. So I see no problem with city coming back to city council next year. If they're happy with this contractor, they're happy with the price, putting it in the consent agenda, that they're renewing the contract and moving forward. So I think it's a good idea to bring this back to city council. Let us have a say. Just keep us in the loop. That's all I'm asking. Keep us in the, we're the ones who approve the city budget. We are the ones responsible for how this money is spent. Keep us in the loop. So I say it's a good idea to bring it back to city council. If we don't want to have this huge debate, just throw it in the consent agenda and we'll vote on it and we'll move on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yanis. Mrs. Sarowski.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, this contractor, Kazar, is the same contractor that we used last year. Is that correct?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Mayor Pro Tem Sarowski, yes, that's correct.
And what was the cost for the same services that they provided last year, which was a pretty heavy snow year?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Mayor, since we have our purchasing manager in the room, I would prefer that he comment on costs from last year.
Do you know offhand? Okay.
So, because I'm trying to figure out if it's comparable to the same bid, so that we're looking at apples and apples.
I understand. I do not have that number in front of me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, that was a good question that we needed answered. So do we have any idea of the cost, or what the bid was and was approved for last year? Not necessarily the total, but at least the bid. Do we have that?
So last year, the bid wasn't specifically for this service last year. The last year, we were under the gun in switching the departments, and we were going off of an existing contract that we had through the DPW for emergency services. And it was designed that if the snow emergency was overcoming for the DPW and they needed to focus their services on the streets, the contractor would then step in on an emergency basis and clean the municipal sites of snow and ice. So we utilized that contract for that last year as like a trial of seeing if this would work for cleaning the sites without the personnel in Parks and Grounds Department.
And they were, thank you, through the chair again to Mr. Bedoin. So this contractor was used for most of our snow emergencies and our snow events?
Yes, so they were used previously with DPW in clearing rear yard sidewalks, different things. We've exercised this contract over the last few years. Usually it's during the snowfalls where we have a back-to-back snow emergency, or when, we've been, the guys have been out in the road for many days in a row and need that spell. So a lot of times we were getting the Parks and Grounds Department into the streets and then allowing the contractor to take care of those municipal sites in the parks.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, since we don't have numbers to compare, it probably is a very good idea to hold this a little tighter than the original amendment may suggest. And I do agree that we probably should add, I'm in favor of the friendly amendment to bring this back to council. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mrs. Koski.
Thank you. Listening to our purchasing manager, Mr. Bodine, it seems like the purpose of this was, let's try this contractor out for 1 full year. In the event that they work out fine, then we can extend for another 2 additional 1-year periods. We're putting an awful lot of responsibility on him. I think by allowing him to bring it back to council to say, this is what I think, just want your confirmation, that's what I think that we're doing with this motion. It's Mr. Bodine that's going to really be making the decision as to whether we should extend this contract or not, because that's his job. And the city manager just happens to be the city manager, so he gets the responsibility. So that's why I'm in favor of bringing this back, just confirming Mr. Bodine's decision, whether he wants to extend this or he wants to go find a new contractor. So that's why I'm in favor of the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Koski. Anyone else on the?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Radke.
I just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments. This, in my opinion, is us exercising our oversight authority. And I would hope when Mr. Bodine comes back to us, we'll have some firmer numbers so that we actually know we can compare apples to apples rather than just a hazy, we're saving money type situation. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? I guess it's me and you, Mrs. Zarko. I believe any comment on the amended motion?
I don't have, I mean, to be honest with you, even though I prefer the way the old motion was, because I want this contract to go through, I'm going to have to vote in favor of it, even though I'm not really sure that it's what we need to do. I don't see any harm in doing it, let's put it that way. But I also don't want to start chipping away at the city manager's duties. That's my big thing.
Right, I understand. And just to be clear, from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, you could vote against this motion, and if this motion fails, we just go back to the main motion, which is as it was presented. And, but counting the votes, I think they're here. I don't see this as stepping on Mr. Vanderpool's toes, and I don't see it as a problem with the form of government that we have. I think it's certainly a very large expenditure, and it's a little bit in flux. And I think Mr. Bodine turned into Mr. Bodine at some point. Which is the guy
That's why we call him Jared.
the guy from that, wasn't that the motel commercial guy? Mr. Bodine?
Motel 6. Whatever.
Motel 6. Okay, so I think it'd be a good idea to bring it back. I'm comfortable really with it either way because I trust Mr. Vanderpool and I trust that it would be. You know, the reality is, whatever it is this year, that's going to essentially form the basis of what goes into our budget next year, and it would be voted on and it would be debated during the budgetary process. And if we thought, wow, that was way out of whack, or, you know, we could do better, we would have discussed it. So this is just another layer of protection. I don't see any issue with it. So I'm going to vote yes on the amendment. So without any further discussion on the amendment, could we please have a roll call vote? Mrs. Riska?
Absolutely.
Mayor Taylor?
Could you read the amendment?
Yes,
Okay.
could you read the motion
So
with the amendment?
let me do that. So the amended motion, which is on the floor, is to award the bid for snow removal services at municipal sites to Cesar Management LLC, PO Box 661, St. Clair Shores, Michigan 48080, through May 1st, 2020, based on unit prices bid, and authorize the city manager to extend the bid term 2 additional one-year periods under the same terms and conditions, subject to the approval of the city council. It's been moved and supported and debated, and could we please have a roll call vote? Mrs. Riska.
Mayor Taylor, are we voting on just
The
the
amendment.
amendment?
Voting on just the amendment.
Got it. Mr. Yanas?
Yes.
Mrs. Zarko?
Yes.
Mrs. Kosky?
Yes.
Mr. Radke?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes. Okay, so the amendment has passed, and now, Mr. Denault, will we vote on the motion on the floor?
Call the question.
Correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I almost jumped
Okay.
in and wanted to make clear that we were only voting on that last little bit of language, the amendment that was offered to the main motion. Now we are to vote on the actual motion that you read aloud.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. With no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. That was a fun exercise in Robert's Rules and Parliamentary Procedure. And I promise the viewers out there, we did not just give ourselves free health care for the rest of our lives.
That's what you think.
Wait to read the documents.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is communications from citizens. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on any item not on tonight's agenda? I'll start with you, sir, to my right.
Mayor, city manager, and is it assistant city attorney? Or are you the real McCoy?
I tend to assist where I can, sir.
Okay, well, for what it's worth, I'm here this evening to pay tribute and public recognition to 3 different Sterling Heights City Service Departments. First of which is Fire Station number 6 over there on 15 Mile Road. I talked to Lieutenant Wasso. He suggested I come before the city council and pay public recognition. On October the 23rd, we lost our son, 53-year-old, who had lung cancer, and he hemorrhaged and passed away in a bathroom in our basement. We called 111, and within minutes, the ambulance was there. Recognizing the situation, they called for the paramedics. The paramedics come in, and they worked with my son for a length of minutes, maybe going on almost 30 minutes to try to revive him, even though it was apparent that he had passed. When they left, they picked up all the debris from cleaning up in their packages, and they expressed their condolences and compassionate feelings that we lost our son. So I want to report that to the council. I think that was exceptional service on the part of the fire department. Next, a couple weeks later or so, my engine control module on my Malibu failed right on the corner of Van Dyke and Metro. I called the police department, and within a couple of minutes, they were out there. They came and they stayed with me until I got my vehicle safely removed into my residence. So I appreciated that. The next day, I called the officer on duty at the desk and reported that I was satisfied with that. My third was the DPW. When we had this major snowfall here a couple of weeks ago or so, we live on the court. They came by and they pushed the snow up on my front lawn and gave us a very good parking space right in front of our court. So I just wanted to pay public comments to those 3 different departments. We've been in Sterling Heights since June of 1982, 37 plus years. We've always experienced outstanding service. Fortunately, not so much from the police department and the fire department, but often from the DPW. So I just want to go on record and pay public commendation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for those words, and I'm sure our chiefs and Mr. Moore appreciate that, and we are certainly sorry and offer our condolences. Anyone else under communications from citizens? Mr. Shea.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and residents. First thing I want to bring up is driving down 18 Mile Road. The DPW is going to be having a food drive, and they're going to be collecting food, and the sign's up there, and they're going to be collecting food during their business hours and stuff. I think it's 8 to 4 o'clock, but I'm not sure. So they're going to collect for the needy of the community and stuff, and they do it in the past, and it's really a great effort by the DPW and the community to come together to help other people. And I just want to comment on the magazine that came out. It's a nice photo on the front with the ice rink and stuff. It was a really nice photo. And on page Sterling Christmas, they're also going to have a December 7th, they're going to have food donations, community tree, and they're going to have a snow globe photo opportunity. And Mr. Vanderpool mentioned that the ice rink, he said, is going to open December 7th. But on page 25, under the ice rink, it says the ice rink's going to be open from December 1st to March 8th. So I'm not sure if you can give what's the right date or what's going to happen. It doesn't matter to me. It's a beautiful event. If it opens December 7th, but just let people know how it's going to work. The staff that's taking care of it, they do a great job. And it was nice to see, too, in the book, if everybody wants to read about what's going to happen at the community center, go to page 24. It'll tell you what's going to be there and stuff. It's going to be a great asset to the community. It's going to be worthwhile. It's going to be a great plus for the city. So you can find out what's going to be there on page 24. And then another new thing is on page 25. There's going to be Dodge Park carriage rides. That's going to be nice for the Dodge Park. That's something brand new. So we have a lot of things to look forward to in the coming year. But what I'm really here for tonight is I want to thank the mayor and the city council and the city administration. You kept your promise about the Upton House. A year ago, about this time, I was here complaining about not taking care of the Upton House. You've added new windows, roofs. It's amazing the transformation of what's happening with the Upton House. I don't know if it's going to be ready for December 7th. They're working really hard to get it ready, but I just want to thank you for the outstanding job and taking care of the place and what you're doing. I know it's a very expensive endeavor, but when I was here last year complaining, I didn't really think you were going to really go through with everything, and you did. So I want to say thanks. It's a jewel of the community, and I'm glad we're taking care of it. And I also want to thank Megan and Christine from your office for always willing to answer my questions and helping. The city manager's office staff is phenomenal. So I just want to thank them. Anytime I have a question to residents, they can call them. And lastly, I want to thank Debbie Versalona for all the outstanding collection of all the history and helping with the Upton House and taking people through tours and stuff. She's an asset to the Sterling Heights Library. She's a reference librarian, and she's taught me a lot about history. And with what you learned today from the county clerk, you can work with her to expand it and maybe put some of that in the Upton House as a part of the exhibit. So once again, thank you for taking care of the Upton House and everything you do. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shea. Anyone else under communications? Mr. Jefferson?
Charles Jefferson, Sterling Heights. Mayor Taylor, did you see what happened to Don Sherry? Offended a bunch of people. He got let go. He wasn't in Sterling Heights. I'm still waiting on my man to sue me, so hopefully he can hurry up and do that. Mr. Vanderpool, could you tell us how many people were ticketed or fined, or how many people or businesses were ticketed or fined for not moving their cars, or as far as businesses go, to having their snow removed? Mrs. Sharowski, at the last meeting, you was asked a question. Could you get back with us tonight or sometime in the future? Be great. Another question for Mr. Vanderpool. It came to my attention over the last 2 weeks that there was a slight problem here in the city, and it has to do with the it had to do with the mosque issue. That's still a pretty touchy subject for some people. And from what I've seen on the website or going back and looking at the minute meetings, more so from the planning commission meeting than this meeting, but people's names and addresses are still posted up there on the from that meeting, because the chairman of the planning commission asked for people's names and addresses, and for some reason or some way they was posted up there, and some people was harassed and some people on both sides were being harassed, and I was just wondering if there was some way we can get those pulled down at this point. I don't know if we can, and I don't even know if we can get that pulled down off the TV side, because that was also on the TV side. Because I remember I had something to do earlier that night, and I remember coming home and turning on the TV, and there it was, and I was sitting there going, "Why are these people giving their names and addresses? They don't know what they're doing." And I just didn't feel like coming back out to stop that from going on. So can you please tell us that? And another thing came up over the last week with the snow. Is there a city plan for removing the snow off the sidewalks and keeping a maintenance on that? Because that was brought up, again, on Facebook pages. Mayor Taylor responded. He said he would get on that, but he shouldn't have had to get on that. It should have been already taken care of. So I was just asking if there is a policy in place for that and the steady maintenance, because we know you can go by there and shovel, but then wind, snow comes along and it forms the ice. Is there a plan to go back over the streets or what have we? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Anyone else under communications from citizens? If not, I'll close that portion and we'll go on to reports from city administration. Any follow-up, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mayor, just quickly, I stand corrected on the ice rink. It's scheduled to open, weather permitting, December 1st. So thank you for the clarification. The number of citations issued in the last snow emergency was approximately 300. There were a couple of sidewalk areas, even on city property, that we had to circle back and put salt on and clear off. We do have a contractor that does that, but we have many sidewalks, and we're making sure this is kind of a dry run. Last week, we'll make sure that those areas are added. But we do go back into subs when there's a prolonged ice period or snow removal to do cleanup, and sometimes that takes, we have to do that for days after an event, and even salting as well. Fortunately, it's gone now, so there's no need right now, but that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Anything, Mr. Denault?
Nothing from legal or the city attorney's office, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Denault. Open it up to council. Any new business reports?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarco?
Since this is our last meeting before Thanksgiving, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And that's a week from Thursday. And we're all aware of Black Friday and how it comes along. Everybody gets their deals on Black Friday, but we need to mention Small Business Saturday, and that's a Saturday after Thanksgiving. So make sure you go out to eat or visit a family-owned business, but they can certainly use your help, and we certainly want to support small business in Sterling Heights.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarco. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Radke?
Very quickly, I want to echo Mrs. Zarco's comments. I think that everyone has a very happy Thanksgiving. I have one question for the city manager through the chair. I think I read online recently that 18-mile, the sidewalk construction is going to be putting off till next year. I know the barrels are out there. Could you clarify that, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Radke, the barrels are out there because we had hoped to get the sidewalk in yet this year. As some may know, there are pedestrians that walk from the bus route on Van Dyke to businesses over by Mound, and in some cases had to walk on the shoulder. So we now have all the right-of-way. We spent the last year making sure we had the right-of-way, bid the project out, is ready to go. and then we got hit with the snow and obviously a curveball, so that project is delayed until the spring. However, we do want walkers to have a safe area to walk out there, so the barricades will remain throughout the winter, and though we will make sure that the snow is cleared on the other side, the non-traffic side of the barrels, so that they have a clear walkway to get down the entire stretch. That'll be one of the first projects up in the spring.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yanis?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Moore, who is not here, and his staff for their long and difficult work in the recent snow emergency. You know, we do a lot of presentations with this city, and it usually involves either the police department or the fire department, some sort of life safety, but it takes a lot of people to make this city run and run efficiently, and that's extremely hard work. And I also want to say thank you to Mr. Moore's staff. There was a couple of senior citizens that, unfortunately, because the plow went down the street, they got blocked in, and Mr. Moore's staff came and helped extricate those folks so they can get out of their driveways. But, you know, that brings up another point. You know, we have a long winter ahead of us. Farmer's Almanac says it's going to be a very snowy winter. And, you know, I'm just going to ask the citizens that are listening tonight to please keep an eye on your neighbors. We have a lot of senior citizens that live in this area, and they're not able to get out and plow snow or shovel snow, especially, and because your only source of transportation is your own vehicle, they still have to get out and drive, and sometimes they can't get out of their driveways. So, you know, please, everybody, just kind of keep an eye on your neighbors and help them if they need some help, you know, not only getting out of their house, you know, clearing off their sidewalks and helping them with their vehicles. It's a great neighborly thing to do, and I know it'll be greatly appreciated. And outside of that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Yanis.
Mayor
Anyone else?
Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Thanks. I as well would like to send kudos to the DPW department. The plows actually came through my neighborhood in the middle of the night before the snow emergency, so any cars that were on the street actually got plowed in before everybody went to work. So they were digging out, and what was nice, and I had a couple of neighbors reach out to me saying that they appreciated that the next day, the plow actually came back through and was able to clear that snow from the cars that were parked in the street and removed. So they appreciated that as well. They work long hours during those snow events, and I really appreciate all of their hard work and patience with the road conditions. You know, we couldn't do it without them. We couldn't be safe without them, and I truly appreciate that department, as well as all of our first responder departments. And with that, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Nothing further.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So I wanted to say thank you to the gentleman that came tonight to talk about his son passing. He's called me a couple of times during the last few weeks. He was very nervous about coming, but he really wanted to thank our three major departments that have assisted him. And I wanted to echo exactly what he was saying, which was we have excellent city services, but to have somebody impacted within 2 weeks of all three of those services tells us that we're doing, and our services, our departments of police, fire, and DPW are doing great work. And they've helped one poor gentleman who's has a rough couple of weeks. So that's, it's heartwarming to see that, and I'm very, very grateful for the work that our staff members are doing. I do want to also thank Mr. Shea for his public service announcements. He did some very good work. We do need to collect money, or excuse me, money or food, but definitely food for the needy over this holiday season. So please remember that there is availability over at the 18-mile recycling center right by the DPW offices, where we can distribute or drop off food so it can be distributed to the residents that need it. And then also, thank you all for doing such good work in the city as far as coming to our meetings. Mr. Jefferson, I will get to you about your question, and I do want to thank you for always being here, because you do keep us on our toes, and that's important. We need to be on them. And then also, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. My family will be at the Lions game, so go Lions. I was there this weekend, so please pray for the Lions. And with that, I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mrs. Koski?
I also would like to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. I am going to have a happy Thanksgiving. My daughter-in-law is cooking.
Yeah. There you go.
And I don't mind doing the cleanup, so. But I would like to tell Jerry Seja that I had a T-shirt just like the one you have on tonight, but I wore mine out. Yours really looks good. I like that color. Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, the Iron Bell presentation tonight, they mentioned a website. How can a resident find that website information if they would like to follow through on the information that they have posted?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Koski, great question. That will be, the link will be on our main page. We'll have it there for the next 30 days. So if you want to go to our main page, click on the link and it'll take you right there. And then after 30 days, we'll move that into our city development page where people can still link on it thereafter.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Koski. Thank you again for indulging me at the beginning of the meeting to show some support for our Sterling Heights Titans football team. I wasn't at the last regular city council meeting. I was in Richmond, Virginia, presenting at the United States Conference of Mayors, Mayors Institute on City Design, talking about some design challenges we have in the city of Sterling Heights and getting some ideas from experts about ways to enhance certain areas of our city. So I wasn't here, and I didn't have the opportunity then to thank everyone like the other council members did. And I just want to say that I'm pleased that I won my reelection, and obviously pleased to have all of my colleagues on the city council back. It's great to work with you. While over these past couple weeks, I've kind of dived into the numbers of the election, and I found something pretty interesting, I think. The city seems to be overall pretty happy with the group we have here. And it showed in the overwhelming reelection of all 7 incumbent members of city council. And the incumbents are a pretty popular group in the city. Looking back, you've got to go all the way back to, I think, before 2005. And since 2005, there have been 3 elected incumbents who have lost an election. And 2 of those, one was Paul Smith winning an election and then losing an election 2 years later. So it's been very stable over the last 14 or 15 years. And I think that's very interesting. So it's something like 46 out of the last 48 elected incumbents have been reelected. And what is my point? We have 2-year terms here in the city of Sterling Heights, and we are an outlier amongst cities in Michigan our size. The limited research I did is that very, very few cities have 2-year terms, and for, I believe, good reason. 2-year terms do not provide a whole lot of stability, and even though the same people are getting reelected time and time and time again, there's uncertainty when you have 2-year elections. So I think 4-year terms is a better policy. It's the favored policy. It is a best practice amongst cities, particularly our size. There's no city in the top 15 or 20 that, in terms of population, that have 2-year terms. So I would like the city administration to come back and present some sort of information to us confirming that, and doing maybe even a little bit broader study in terms of cities our size in the Midwest or throughout the country, and what the pros and cons of 2-year terms versus 4-year terms are. And I'd like to begin having that discussion, because when you have 2-year terms, what you end up happening is you're constantly running for reelection. And that time is time that I think could be better spent doing the business of being a mayor or council member. It's my opinion, and I think that it's time to have a discussion with the community and see what the community thinks. Ultimately, it would be up to the community, and I'd like to see that discussion, and I'd like to see whatever information we could have presented by our city administration. I'm not saying let's present something that we can put on the ballot, but I'd like to get that information, and without any objection from my colleagues, I'd like to see that. 30 days, 6 weeks, nothing, no rush, but sometime early next year, maybe, we get that information presented to us. Is that a problem, Mr. Vanderpool?
Not at all.
Okay, that's all I have. I want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, and go out and enjoy that ice skating rink, which is going to be opening December 1st. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
So moved. Oh,
Support. It's been moved and supported.
And moved again.
With no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Go Titans.
Go Titans.